So look at the words, okay? A stationary 15 kg object is located on a table near the surface of the earth. The coefficient of static friction between the surface is 0.40 and the coefficient of kinetic friction is 0.25. So right there, what I want you to do in this moment is I want you to look at the words given to you. What definition do you need to know? So at times, if there is a definition that you know, feel free to change them so that you can make even more of an easier sense of it. And that's fine. So we know at rest, because stationary means at rest. What other definition do you need to know? Say that one more time. We need what?
You said what
Definition. Absolutely.
We know static friction and kinetic friction.
Okay, so what's static friction? We need to know that definition. What is that? What's static friction? Okay, static friction is an item that is at rest. Good. What is kinetic friction?
An item that is moving.
Okay, now keep in mind both items are acting on friction still. So static friction is an item that is at rest due to friction. Don't forget that. And coefficient of kinetic friction is an item that's in motion with friction still playing a part in it. So one is in motion with friction and one is at rest because of friction. Does that make sense so far? Step 2. What's happening to this item? So go look underneath. What is the next sentence telling you? What's happening to this item? You can create a little story about this item. What's happening to it?
Is moving between surfaces.
Very good. What else do we know is happening to this item? Create a little story or a little sentence about it.
The object is located on the table.
Objects located on the table. Static friction is in between the surfaces. What else do we know?
The kinetic friction.
What about it?
Moving the item.
Is what?
That it's moving the item.
Not the kinetic. The kinetic friction is not what's moving the item. What's moving the item is underneath that sentence.
The force applied.
Exactly, because that's what's being applied. The kinetic friction is not moving the item because kinetic friction is still friction. It's still slowing down the item, but it's saying it's slowing down the item as it is moving. What's causing it to move is the force being applied to this item. So now, what is the question asking us to find?
Horizontal force.
Not the well, we have the horizontal force. What is the horizontal force being applied to this object? 20 newtons. So this person walked up to this object on the table and just applied 20 force to this object. But there are other forces that did not see was also working outside of what they applied. For example, they didn't notice static friction that's also working as they applied force to this object, nor did they notice kinetic friction. So with that being said, we need to determine what the force of friction actually is. So step 1, determine the force of static friction. I already kind of set you guys up a little bit for this, but I want you guys to take a moment because you should know how to do this. Use the equation and tell me, when you are adding all the variables together, it's not adding, multiplying the variables together, what is the force of static friction? What did you receive? So when you looked for the force of static friction, you got 58.8 newtons. That's how much force static friction is holding this object. Beautiful. What is kinetic? What about kinetic friction? What's the force of that one? So we've determined that, okay, the force of static friction is 58.8. That means that this item is stuck right now. Like, I gotta be pushing at least Well, actually, what do we know about static friction in regards to applied force?
Or that is force applied, which causes the object to be at rest.
Ooh, static friction will push just as hard as force applied. Drop the mic on that one. That was beautiful. I like that. Static friction will push just as hard as the force being applied. So that force applied better be stronger. If it's not stronger, then it's not going to happen. So, what is the horizontal force being applied then? Look at it. So if the force being applied is 20 Newton, is it equal or greater than both forces?
Greater.
20 Newtons is equal and or greater than both forces, being both friction force, excuse me.
You said both friction.
Okay, I need you to look at the question on the bottom so that you're not confused, because I am reading off the question. So if you're following my steps in the question, then you'll see it. Is it equal? Is the horizontal force being applied, is it equal or greater than both friction forces? Yes or no? Horizontal force is not equal or greater than kinetic friction force or static friction force, because horizontal force is 20 while kinetic friction force is 36.75 and static friction force is 58.8.